1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3. One, two. I wonder what I'm going to do today. Should have planned this better. Just kidding, I've got a whole lecture. Just kidding. But I suppose I could revise my slides to remember what we're doing. In the end. live viewers. That's one of these streams. Oh, a bunch of people on the streams. Thanks folks for joining. We're going to start in 1 minute. Okay, going back to the first slide. Text me or something. Alright, starting up my recording. Start recording. Good morning, folks listening to the recording. And good morning, everybody else. Just before I start, I was making sure my volumes are working as it should. -6 is kind of the expected number here. It's a bit tricky. I don't quite know why. Like, it just stops at -6 if I put it up to there. It's peaking like crazy on my audio interface. That doesn't seem right. Doesn't seem right at all. I guess -6 is where it is on the meters. I don't have a very accurate meter here on the audio interface. Maybe I should just get one that doesn't have a meter and do it in a better way. And I have in the past had issues with accidentally peaking or accidentally having the volume turned down in the system, which is not what I want either. Is there any distortion or anything? Someone yell at me if there's distortion. I'll turn off my unavailable. Set to... I guess I'm busy, so I'll set myself to busy on Teams. Left-hand side small. I want right-hand side small, I think. Good morning, folks. Great to have you here. Anybody here? I can see myself in the encoder preview, which is good. Hi, Harry. Good to have a few folks joining me this morning. Now, do I feel better? I feel better, but I think it's one of the various kinds of cold viruses where you end up with some coughing that can sometimes go for a couple of weeks. So that's really annoying, isn't it? Because, slightly distorted, very distorted. It's slightly annoying to have colds going for a couple of weeks because obviously people get annoyed with you if they hear you coughing in public, but we persevere. I'm certainly, my voices should be much better today, although I should just keep the ASMR atmosphere. So I need to get a beefy compressor and limiter toolchain, obviously, for my desk to get that volume just exactly right. Hard to get things organized. Thanks, Harry, for the feedback. That's great. Folks, I can see that there's some... Oh, we're chatting. Wherever you chat, I'll pick it up. I'm sure it'll show up somewhere. But I'm trying a new way of distributing the video on Teams. There's a new kind of link. It's a bit confusing, but like Microsoft have this product called Stream, which I think eventually is going away. The Stream is going away, but they're integrating all the video products inside Teams and SharePoint. So I'm just testing this morning, running the video through Teams instead. It is actually a stream video, but it's just like the front end will change eventually. And then when you're in Teams, like you get this little Q&A stuff. So if you actually join the video, there's a Q&A session, Q&A open. For anyone who wants to ask a question, you can ask questions anonymously in the Q&A during the video, which is totally fine. And, yeah. Oh, these chats, but yeah, cool. I guess it would be more useful if, I'll leave it on the new pane. I'm going to keep the Q&A open as well as my chat. I guess I better make 2 windows now. That's going to be a bit tricky. Two windows, so I can see any questions that pop up. I've got a whole array of screens here now, so I can keep track of everything as we're going. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to COMP1720, 6720, week 4. We're getting through the semester now. Today's lecture is about 2 code topics, which are really, really important for getting your code able to do multiple things quickly. And that's really the advantage of doing art with a computer in a programming language rather than in Photoshop or something, is that you can define a behavior in a programming language and then run it multiple times using iteration and control structures. So our 3 control structures, if then else, conditionals, iterations, and functions, let us define ways to run behaviors multiple times with lots of parameters and structure our art making activities automatically, which is really cool. Instead of just making one monster by setting out the shapes, you can set out the shapes for a monster and then say, okay, do this 100 times, and P5 will do it and draw 100 monsters. So that is really, really incredibly powerful when you start to think about it. It's hard to make 100 monsters in Photoshop. I guess you could duplicate something 100 times, but when you have a computer programming language, you can say, okay, I'll make a function which will draw a monster in a certain location with certain input parameters for X and Y, for instance, or size as well. And then you can draw 100 monsters with all of these different parameters, and maybe you've got some variations built inside your function so that your 100 different things all look a little bit different. And it starts to become a very powerful way of creating artworks, which is what we're doing today. It's a big topic. The little art topic we'll do is to talk a little bit about critique, or how we might judge art. And I guess the point I want to make loud and clear here is that art is not purely subjective. There are lots of aspects of value in art. Some of them have subjective aspects. Some of them are, very objective, and some of them are, a mix of the two in some ways. But it's, I guess it's a time to reflect on how we assign value to artworks, and particularly that's important because you're getting grades on artworks that you're creating in this course. And sometimes folks come back to me and they're like, how can you possibly grade an artwork? It's completely subjective. Some person might like it and some person might hate it. Well, there are aspects of that within looking at art, but there are other ways to see art as well, which are more fine-grained. So we'll look at a few of those today. Keep remembering to keep my voice down, so I'm on the ASMR version of this lecture. My light is a bit wrong. I forgot to turn the big light on. There we go. I think it's just going to adjust the gain on my camera might be a bit high. Admin corner, just a minute. Assignment 1 is due today at 9 p.m. We have a drop-in session. This is something I put in on the forum last night. Someone here. Yeah, assignment help drop-in. Folks, there will be an assignment help drop-in lab from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock this evening. The venue will probably be N114. That's not used today. I just wanted to get confirmation from the admins that I could use it. And online, there will be tutors there to help you. The goal of the drop-in lab today is not to do your assignment for you, not to give you marks for your assignment, or if people come in saying, is this an HD, is this a D, is this a credit? That's not what we're about. The main point of the lab is to make sure that everybody has a correctly submitted assignment, to give you technical help if you have an assignment which is not quite working and you're just not sure why, we can help you. If you can't quite get things to work on GitLab or you're confused, we can help you. If you have crosses mysteriously on the CI jobs and you want to get green ticks, we can help you. So that's the main point, making sure people get their assignments correctly submitted, solving any last minute problems. And I know there are people who still haven't forked the assignment template or made a first push, so we're not quite at 100% compliance yet. But I'm looking for it. Folks, COMP1720 is a friendly and fun environment. It's a no student left behind course. I don't like seeing students not submit the assignments. So if there's any issues preventing you from submitting an assignment, please fill in the extension application form on the policies page of the website. I'll just bring that up again. Policies, extensions. So if there's any issues about your submitting your assignment today, please, please, please let me know in the extension app. We'll process these this afternoon, make sure that they're all clear. I know there is someone who probably sent an extension on the weekend and panicked about it and started sending me emails. Don't do that. You just need to fill in the extension form and we will get to it today. Someone's asking a really good question. Can we modify index.html to include other source files, or should we strictly put everything in sketch.js? You can modify index.html to include other source files, but just make sure that your artwork actually looks right on the test server. I've forgotten right now what the deploy stage is, but we can just find out. I would only do that if you know what a GitLab CI file is and you're comfortable editing it. Page deploy. Oh yeah, okay, that's fine. If you're just including everything that goes on the server is the stuff in your assets directory, any HTML file, and any JavaScript file in your repository. So if you know what you're doing and you're comfortable that your work is going to show up on the test server, that's fine. Yeah, it's totally fine to have multiple JS files. It's also totally fine to have one JS file. Somehow in this class, I know there's folks who have taken a lot of software engineering courses and don't like having one big source file. I secretly sometimes love having like a 2,000 line source file from a student, because it's like, you can see that there's so much detail and thought gone into how to create the artwork. They just want to have so many lines of code and not a lot of worry about, society's expectations about how long source code files should be or something, right? It's sort of punk rock to have really long source code files. Yeah. Totally fine with that. Anyway, as long as your stuff works on the test server, if it works on the test server and it obeys the specifications, totally happy. Okay. Yeah, so drop-in session today. If you have any questions at all, any help required, please drop into the drop-in session. I want my tutors to be really busy. I don't want them to be sitting around not doing anything. They are getting paid, so please go and use their expertise with any question you might have about the assignment. Assignment 2 is not quite out yet. It's a bit unfair to release an assignment while you're still doing the first one. I'll release it tomorrow. That means I have to finish writing it today. It will be due 9 p.m. first Monday of the teaching break. So that means you have 4, 5, 6, about 3 weeks to do it, rather than 2 weeks for the first assignment. So a little bit more time. But it's a little bit more complex as an assignment, not much more complicated. Then after that, there's one further assignment, assignment 3, and then there's the major project. Okay. Any other questions? Oh, are we able to see other people's questions? Only if I publish them. I want them to auto-publish. Settings. No. See, it's the first time I've used this Q&A thing, so I'm just not sure quite what the the vibe is, I want close, no, I want open questions. Like, I have to approve a question. I guess it's the kind of thing that works if you have a moderator to sit here and look at the questions, but I'll periodically look over there and approve any questions that I get. All right, recap. We know how to specify positions and colors with numbers in this course. That's now core knowledge. We learned about that in week 1. It's very important. We learned about how the basic commands for drawing in P5, rect, ellipse, fill, and stroke. You folks know all about variables. You probably declared some of your own in your assignment. You know about doing some simple maths, plus, minus, times, and divide. You know how to do conditions with if and Boolean expressions. And you know about looping with while and for. What don't you know about? Well, there's a few things we're going to talk about today that you may not know about yet, or you may have a hint of an idea, or you may have a lot of an idea, and you're just wondering when I'm going to start talking about it. But first one, variable scope, then functions, then arrays. Functions we already know about, but this time we're going to make our own ones. And then arrays is where you get multiple things and put them together, and that's where computer art gets really powerful. Scope. What is scope? What is this concept? Scope is related to flow. It's a way of talking about which bits of code can see each other. And sometimes in P5 or JavaScript, you'll get an error of something like missing variable. But you can see with your eyes in the code that the variable is there. But the problem is that the bit of code that is running at that moment can't see it. It's in a different part of your code. And this is all to do with these little curly braces, these little blocks. So anything inside blocks, I sort of told you that that's a bit of code that kind of stands apart. You're saying this bit of code is a block that goes together. And in these cases, these blocks of code are associated with a function. You can also have blocks of code associated with an if condition, and then the squiggly brackets, and you can have it inside a while loop. While condition, sorry about the slightly bad resolution, and then my block of code. The same squiggly brackets. So there's a concept called the global scope. Global scope, which is everything in your code which is outside of any curly bracket. So that's the kind of at the start of the file, or things in between functions. You can put more variables there if you want to. All those things are global scope, and they're visible from anywhere inside your program. And then you might have something which is inside a function. So, whoops, let's try this. We'll suck it and see, as my first year computer science teacher taught me. People would ask them a question, this was when I was doing COMP1720 many moons ago, and they'd ask her a question, oh, can you do such and such a thing? And she'd say, suck it and see. That meant just go and give it a try, and come back and tell me what the results are. So, reference error, x is not defined. So I've said let x equal 200, and then inside draw, I've used x, but I can't have x. It doesn't know about it. Someone was asking about question. Answer is yes, you can modify index.html. Condition, just check that it works on the test server. I guess I'm timing out now. If you put JS and HTML files in folders, it won't work unless you edit the GitLab CI file. If you don't know how to do that, what that means, don't put JS files and HTML files in folders. Okay, back to scope. So this X is not going to work. If I put the X out here, global scope, it does work. There's my X, and now it knows about it. What if I do this? Let X equals 200. Still works. So I've defined the X globally. I've modified it locally within this function, but it's still the same X. I still had the one X defined globally. And then my ellipse is still able to access that from inside this different function. So sometimes if you want to have a variable which goes between multiple different functions, the way to do that is to define it globally and then modify it or assign it a value inside your setup function, for instance, once you know what it's supposed to be. One problem you can get into is that you might have a canvas and you want this to be, maybe this is screen width or something. Is that it? I've forgotten what the variables are. No, that's not the one. Screen width, I'll have to look in the reference. p5js.org, this is me being forgetful. But you know, it's always good to read the reference. Screen, just window width, that's the one. Yeah, I really want this line. So you can do this, it will make your canvas as big as the window that it's in. So now the canvas is exactly the size of this window. Then I might make my X 1/4 of that. So I've already got window width. It's now setting, create canvas sets the p5 variable called width, divided by 4. Maybe I'll make it a bit smaller, divided by 5. All right, so far so good. Now, you might think, well, I could put it up here, but that's a problem. Because at this point of the program, it doesn't know about width. It doesn't know about width until this runs. So we have to do the assigning of X inside setup. Okay, sorry, I could feel that one coming. Okay, so we're learning a little bit about the possible pitfalls of scope of variables. Now, if you're curious about why there's this let declaration and a different one called var, the let declaration is a newer way of declaring a variable that specifically gives it scope inside a block. So it's a block scoped variables, and a block is code delineated by those curly brackets. So here on MDN, this is the main reference for JavaScript, the programming language. We've got an X out, a global X out here, and then we're also making a block X inside the if condition. So the first X is declared to be 1, assigned 1. This tests if X is the same as 1. It is. Then we run this code, let X equal 2, console log X, which prints 2 to the console. There it is. This has actually made a different X. Then we are done with the if condition, and we do console log x, and we get another x. So this could be a problem if you accidentally did let x twice. So this code is working, no errors. Where's my mistake? Can we write our code in Rust, compile it to WebWasm, and call those functions from our sketch.js? Yes, you can if you want to. But I'm not going to debug your Rust. So, yeah, var is confusing. I always forget how var works, but when you've got lets, do you see what is happening here? It's weird, right? In programming, different scopes can have different versions of the same variable. Because imagine you've got a big program, and lots of parts of your program might want to have a variable called x or I or something, a simple name for doing a simple task. So they might like to define, declare and assign those variables separately. And the let declaration lets you do that, let. So here I've got a version of x, one kind of x globally. I've got another x inside setup. And this one is looking for any x it can find. It can't find this one. It can only find that one. Whoops, another cough, sorry. I'll just suck on a lozenge, that might help. I'm back. So, if this stuff doesn't make a lot of sense, I guess the lesson is, if you're using a variable with a name, make sure you declare it somewhere, but make sure you declare it once, okay? If you're doing let x at global level, that's great. If you want to do let x inside a function, that's great, but don't do it in both places. Otherwise, you could end up confused unless you really know what you're doing. All right. And if something's not working, check the console. That's a mantra. Luckily in the P5 web editor, I've got a console right here, but if you're in your browser, you'll have to open up the console separately. Just check some, check a few questions. Yep, exactly. Someone had the answer. 2 let declarations. Good job. And Xianhang has a question. Monster.png cannot pass the CI/CD test. There's a little slight bug in the CI, really, where it was on some computers, particularly on a Mac, when you grab your screenshot of the monster, it's double the resolution than you would expect. So if that's the case, your CI job won't pass, but I've got instructions in this helpful forum post to help you if you've got this issue. So jump on there and have a read. There's lots of me chipping in, Brent has an opinion, Maddie's got an opinion. We've all got different ways of dealing with it. The good news is that those CI checks are more feedback for you to make sure you're getting everything correct. You're not going to lose marks if your monster.png file is not quite right. As long as it's there, it's really good to have everything there. Okay. All right. Oh, we did this one. Okay. I did all these examples right here. Blah, blah, blah. We can deal with this later. Turns out scoping's good. It does help code to work better in the long run, but it can cause some frustrations in the short term if you're not used to it. Make sure, I guess the golden rule is, in a smaller program, just make sure you declare a variable once or know where you declare it and understand what the scope is of that declaration. All right, now functions. This is where stuff gets interesting. So we know about a few meanings of the word function. The act of executing or performing any duty, office, or calling, my function. A sequence of programming instructions that perform a specific task packaged as a unit. That sounds more like what we do in computer science, this one. I guess another version of a function is a kind of party, an event. But we're taking a sequence of programming instructions, putting them in a block with curly brackets, and then giving them a name so we can use them again somewhere else. That's a function. Melody, could you please not tell people to delete the CI file? No, don't delete the CI file. The anatomy of a function. I think we've had a little look at this already because it's the way we use functions so far. You've got a name for our function, some parameters that are used, the instructions for that function in specific. The name in this case rect specifies what to do, and the parameters tell us how to do it. So together, this lets us get our computers to do the same thing repeatedly with variation, which sounds like a good way to start making an artwork, doesn't it? Do the same thing repeatedly, but with variation to give it interest. And this is the other kind of function, the party. I've got this party slide. All these people are enjoying a adult beverage at the end of an important work event. So they've got a celebration in order. So we're saying the lingo is that we call a function because we're telling it to do its job, like the staff at a restaurant who might be serving adult beverages at one of these functions. Any other questions? Yep. How many jobs should a function have? I guess it's kind of up to you. But often people think that it's nice to have functions doing just one job or doing a simple job. If a function gets too long and complicated, people start to suggest, or programmers start to suggest, maybe it should be split up into multiple functions. Because you want to be able to reuse those jobs, right? If you have a couple of, like, one person's the cleaner, one person's making the drinks, one person is baking the cake. You could have a function which cleans up, serves the drinks, and bakes the cake. But if you then only want to bake the cake and you don't want to clean up and serve drinks, you have to make a new function just for baking the cake. So it's better to modularize this so that there's a function for baking the cake, a function for cleaning up, and a function for serving drinks. If you want to do all those things at once, that's fine. Call those 3 functions. If you want to do just one of them, that's fine. You can just call one. So that's modularizing your code. And indeed, as Melody has said, this gives you a great way of telling where things go wrong if it's broken. How do you find out what the parameters mean in this function? Well, this is easy. I've told you this since week 1. Oops. Check the reference. If you're making your own functions, you can't check the reference. You are the reference. There's a meme going around, I am the documentation. Someone post that meme in the chat. I'll try to find it. Oops. It's a Breaking Bad meme. It's been reframed from something. There's the wrong one, but there's a meme of someone saying I am the danger, or the guy from Breaking Bad, and someone changed it to I am the documentation, because you are the documentation when you write your own functions. Okay, here's how to do it. Writing your own functions. Let's make one. You write some code. You put it in a block. You have the magic word, function, and this block magically becomes a function once you give it a name. So here's the name. Whoops. Oh dear. Nope. Oh, there we go. That's better. My little tablet gets confused sometimes. There's the name for the function. There's the magic word, function, and then we've got our parameters. So our parameters are going to be some variable names, but we don't declare them or assign them. We're sort of declaring them by putting them inside the parentheses after the name, and then you can later use them And the assignment happens when someone calls your function. So they call polka dot, 50, 63, and then 50 goes into X and 63 goes into Y. And even if you had a globally scoped other X, this one takes over that one inside the function. Let's try it. As usual, suck it and see. So we've got our polka dot function. Polka dot 50, 75. Oh, I spelled it wrong. First typo of the day. There's my polka dot. Well, that's just great, isn't it? But I told you it would be fun, more useful to do this multiple times, didn't I? I'm actually going to do this inside the setup function so you can tell I'm not cheating. While, for, I guess, for let I equals 0, I less than 10, I plus plus, block, polka dot, random width, and random height. What is this going to do? Someone give me a prediction in the chat. What is it going to do? So my function draws a polka dot at x, y, which are the parameters. So here I'm taking a random number between 0 and the width of my sketch. And over here I'm taking a random number between 0 and the height of my sketch. And this for loop is going to make sure that my code runs 10 times. So I should get 10 polka dots in random locations. And there I go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Correctly, yeah. Correctamundo. Yep. Excellent work. I see some folks who've taken advanced computer science subjects giving me the answer here, which I should totally expect that you know how to write a for loop. If I put this in the draw loop, you can see why I didn't do it. It's going to blink them over thing. I'll just change the frame rate to 2 frames per second. It's going to keep drawing those polka dots. Now the cool thing about making a function is if I now want to change my polka dot, I can just change it in this one place. And you can imagine that that's useful if I've got a lot of code that uses polka dots. A lot of different places if I've used this function. Then I only have to adjust it in one place. It makes coding so much easier when you've got functions to modularize things. There's my random polka dots. Okay, what next? Calling a function that gives back a value. So far our functions are just is a doing function. It calls other functions and draws. And that's really one of the better ways to use functions in P5. But in other computer science classes, they tend to have functions that return values because you use functions as a kind of calculator. This is sort of an 1100, 1110, 1730 kind of thing. Your functions tend to be a calculator to do some complex calculation and give you a number back. So if you want to return a number from a function, you can use this simple line of code. The return magic word, the return command in JavaScript, will return a number. So if I've got this function in my code, that could be used over here. Background. It's a very simple function. It just doubles a number, x times 2. Double 100. That was easy. This is not a very useful example, but there might be situations where you want to do a more complicated calculation and have that block of code sitting by itself, very safe, very easy to operate, and not going to get in anyone's way. All right. A few other special functions. These ones are special from an interaction perspective. And we'll start to look at these today, I think, a few interactive methods of controlling P5. More next week when we have a whole lecture on interactive art. So, mouse pressed is a special function which is already used, it's already defined, but it doesn't do anything. And you can override the definition to do something else. So mouse pressed will actually, this function will run anytime you click the mouse button. So if I click the mouse button, here we go, 3, 2, 1, goes white, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1. So you can use this function. It's called a callback function because there's something else tracking when the mouse is clicking, and it calls your code back by using a function name that you're supposed to know about. Another one called, this is another option. You can do a more detailed version by getting this event object, but we don't know about objects yet. So this is the mouse press function. It's called once after every time a mouse button is pressed. The mouse button variable can be used to determine which button has been pressed. More questions? Not quite. So that's handy. Let's try this other one, key pressed. So this one, let's read the thing. The key pressed function is called once every time a key is pressed. The key code for the key that was pressed is stored in the key code variable. So you might have seen that one before inside the assignment 1 template, because there we go. Oh, key typed. So this is key typed, which is probably when you release it. So this function runs whenever someone releases a key, I think. Okay. So there's a few more of those ones. We'll have a look in the reference later to try to track down a full list. You can read more about functions on MDN. That's a good idea. Always advisable to look on the MDN web docs. And what's the point of this slide? Well, sometimes we have functions, we talk about the background function, even though it has some parameters. So there might be some functions like background that have many ways of calling them. Background has a lot of different options for its functions, so you have to look in the reference to see what those options are. Nice feature of JavaScript that you can have lots of ways of calling a function, different ways of having the parameters set out. All right, so, making a button. Am I going to do that? I guess I can. How do we do that? Make a button. It's probably a thing in your labs, but we might do it. We've got to draw the button, figure out whether the button's clicked, and then put some info in where and how big is the button. I don't know how you combine those into a function. I've forgotten what the solution is to this little puzzle. Draw a rectangle. I should have revised this one. I've forgot what the the important part of it is. So I guess I want to draw a rect, right? If I've got a button, well, go fill 25500. It'll be a red button. And oh, we got to have a width and height. W and H we'll call them. Uh-oh. People are chatting to me. So first thing, we'll stop doing frame rate 2, and I'll stop my polka dots, and I'll make my button 10, 10. I want it to be 100 in width and 50 in height. It's going to be a nice, classic rectangular shaped button. What am I missing here? Oh yeah, don't need that. Okay, I haven't drawn it yet, but in my function I've got to draw it. Rect W Y W X Y X Y W H. There's the drawing bit. So far so good. Okay, there's my button. Well, it's an exercise for someone said the button goes left as an exercise to the viewer. It could be an exercise for me. Let's do it right now. You can see my process of coding it badly. So now it was supposed to return, what was the assignment? Return a Boolean. I'll just copy that in. So this one I've done. Returns a Boolean if the button's being clicked. How do I find out if the button's being clicked? So I really need my mouse to be inside there. Let clicked equal false. And we're going to return clicked. So now I have some work to do. I have to work out if the mouse is inside there and if the mouse button is down. And I think there's some other stuff about mouse buttons where you can do it with a variable, not with a function. Mouse X. Mouse is pressed. That's what I want. A Boolean system variable mouse is pressed is true if the mouse is pressed and false if not. Uh-oh. So first I've got to work out if the mouse is inside this area. So I need to make sure the mouse X is more than X here and less than X plus Y. Equals mouse X greater than or equal to X and mouse X less than or equal to X plus width. Okay, I'll just do it in a few. I'll do it in a few lines like this. Then we've got to have mouse Y greater than or equal to Y and mouse Y less than or equal to Y plus H and mouse is pressed. Was that the name of that? Mouse is pressed. And I can do it all in one line. I can have the let there. Do you think it's going to work? So far, I don't really need to do anything. This is returning a value, but it's just throwing away. Some interesting thoughts here. A mouse press has 3 parts: when the mouse is pressed, when the mouse is held, and when the mouse is released. Well, true. Oh, we're doing Super Mario 64. I'm here for Super Mario 64 videos going in the comments, folks. So anyone who has any other SM64 videos, you're welcome. Hazy Maze Cave. What a trip. That one is wild. I got lost in Hazy Maze Cave when I was 11, and I still get lost in Hazy Maze Cave today. Okay. I'll watch it later, Melody. I'm not going to watch it while giving a lecture, unless I should. So what am I going to do with this variable? So button clicked. Ooh, maybe I should draw it differently if it's being clicked. So first we'll figure out if it's clicked. And if it is being clicked, we'll change its color. If clicked. Do I have to do that? Running too much Python. Else fill I want it to be sort of dull gray or something. There's the dull gray. Oh, it works. So if I click over here, no clicked. Click in here, clicked. This is pretty good. I should save this one. Charles's great button. Charles's great butt, no, button. Because it's a great button. Now, I've used the clickiness of the button inside the button function to draw it, but I might want to use it for something else. So because I've returned the clicked value, I can access it here from draw, and then I can use it somewhere else. If clicked, I might draw an ellipse. I'll change the fill. I'll draw a green ellipse. There we go. Ready? And it stays there. Well, that's pretty cool, isn't it? I might make it fade away. Background 0. Bye-bye. A bit faster. What a great lecture this is. I solved a problem about buttons. I don't think I've ever really done that before. I didn't write that slide originally. It came from one of my colleagues. And I've always probably skipped over it or something, or just been like, oh, it's too hard. But today we did it. We made the great button. Well, that was fun. We used a function. We used a conditional. We used a Boolean variable. And we used some scope. So that was good. New concept, arrays. Arrays. So we've got a few different types, number, string, and Boolean, that we've met already. Number, string, and Boolean. But we might like, so there's some examples, a number, 7, a string, tennis is fun, and a Boolean, true. Can we collect some of these things together into a group? And that's what we're going to do right now, putting multiple variables together. So here are some arrays, multiple variables together. And you may have seen these before in other courses. You may not. And if you haven't, you can see that this is pretty intuitive. We've got some square brackets, and then we've got a list of the stuff that we want to put together. Array of numbers, 124 minus 2, 18, 106, 42, 18. An array of strings, hello darkness, my old friend. Every word is a separate item in the array. And an array of booleans, true, false, true, true, false. That must be significant for some reason. Okay, depending on your programming language, if you've had experiences with arrays, you might not be able to do this. But in JavaScript, you can have an array of whatever. You can have different kinds of things all put together. 100, 200, false banana. So, is this a good idea? Maybe. It might not be. It might be a bad idea. It might be a very confusing idea to have an array of different kinds of types. But you're allowed to do it. JavaScript doesn't prevent you from doing that. Some programming languages, arrays are strictly for one kind of thing. So you can only have strings together, only have numbers together, etc. But not in JavaScript. I hear the sound. Oh, it's a text from someone else. People shouldn't be allowed to text me during lectures. All these things are arrays. So again, matching pair of things, square brackets, everything inside will be initialized as the elements of an array. Okay, the array is the whole thing, all the things together. Each member is an element. The element position is called an index. So the first one is index 0, the next one, the second one is index 1. It's a computer science thing that we start from 0 when we're counting the number of things in an array. Ironically, the index is less than the length always. So if an array has one thing, the index of the last thing in the array will be 0, which is a bit confusing, but makes sense when you think about it. An array of length 1, but the index of the only element in it is 0. An array of length 0 is empty. So the number of elements in the array is called the length. Just been talking about that. And exactly the same procedure for declaring and assigning arrays. Let all the things equal, and then an array, 0, 1, 20, 500. Is there a way to make the array non-generic so that we can prevent calling functions or variables that don't exist on other objects causing error? Yes, but it's far beyond the scope of this lecture, and you wouldn't make it an array. And I don't know if you can do that in JavaScript. You may have to use a thing called TypeScript, which a lot of people do, but not in this class. It's a JavaScript only scenario here. So we're combining something we're learning today with something we've done in week 2, declaring and initializing of variables, and now this array thing. Nothing magical here, all very clear. So a few tasks that you can do with arrays, and we'll go through these in order, finding out how big it is, adding, removing, and modifying things, joining it with other arrays, looking for particular elements. You can do lots of things with arrays. That's the kind of thing you'd need to look in the reference for. But it's the array reference on MDN, not the P5 reference. So for the following, let's have this array. I'll put it in my program. Actually, I might make a new program. Save this one. Make a new one so we can test it. Let odd numbers equal that. Let's close a few windows so I don't get confused. Using the elements in the array. So we can use this square bracket notation to get a number by its index. So the first odd number is odd numbers, that's the variable name for the array, in square brackets 0. The second odd number is odd numbers in square brackets 1. So we can use this in our code. Let's chuck it in to the setup function. So you should be getting odd numbers 3 and setting the background to that. Which number is it? 0, 1, 2, 3. So it should be very dark. Oh, it sets it as light again. I'll just cut that out. We're not doing that. So if I change this to be 225, then it gets bright. That's odd numbers index 3. Okay, so far so good. Remember that we have starting at 0. And if you try to access something that isn't there, JavaScript won't be happy with it. So odd numbers 40, we don't have 40, we don't have 39 elements in the array, or 41, I mean. So this doesn't exist. Object argument is not a valid color representation. So it's confused about that and given us multiple problems. And P5 is saying there might be an issue with the arguments passed to background. So the arguments there, odd numbers 40, is giving us some strange thing back, which is not what we wanted, and it stopped working. So it's hard to explain or figure out exactly what that is that it's giving back, but we can see that we definitely don't have 40 elements in odd numbers, so that's probably it. Okay, changing the things in an array, no big deal. No problem at all. We can add extra things. You can add something to the end. Push 53 will add something to the end. We can add something to the front. Unshift -7, that'll work. It's a bit confusing why we have those two different words. It's the habit of computer science programming language designers of being cute. And they're being cute here by relating these things to the way that numbers work in binary arithmetic. Shift and unshift is an operation you can do on a binary number by moving it one place or back one place. And push it's got an opposite one called pop, is related to a famous data structure called a stack, which has two operations, pushing something on the stack at the top and popping something off. So this push and unshift lets us add an extra element to an array either at the end or at the front. This is the end from your perspective, at the end of the array or at the front of the array. You can remove things from the end of the array. If you want to remove it from the end, you use pop, again related to the stack metaphor. Remove an element from the front, you use shift instead of unshift. Ooh, weird. Why can't they just say add at front or something? Or remove from front or remove from end? They had to be cute, didn't they? Well, sorry about their cuteness. That means you have to memorize a few words. Here's the table. If we want to add something to the front, add front, we use unshift. If we want to add something to the back, we use push. If we want to remove something from the front, it's shift. Remove it from the back, it's pop. So when we modify elements, we're doing exactly the same thing as when we are retrieving them, but we're assigning a new value to a retrieved location in the array. So if odd numbers is this, we can change odd numbers index 4, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, to 12. So that's changing the 7 to a 12. I'll show you how to do this in a minute. Okay. This is a trick question. Suppose you see this, let all the things equal 0, 120, 500. Some code here you can't see. And then we push the value 50 to the end. So now, what are the elements of all the things and how do you know? Someone give me an answer or a thought about it. Someone's asked a really good question on the Q&A. The question is, what could the possible applications of having an array of elements of different types? Well, it's not a very convincing answer because there would be a slightly different data structure that you would really like to use. But in JavaScript, you could have something so like let button. I could have a data structure for a button, and I could be just remembering to myself that the buttons is structured as an array with like X location, Y location, width, height, and a label, and then a Boolean value for where I've clicked it or not. As it turns out, you really don't want to do that kind of data structure with an array. You want to do it with an object. So you'd be doing button equals X, X. I think this is the object notation. Does it let me do it? Yeah, height. Label. So this is an object notation. That's a much better way of having a collection of differently typed things in an array. But the array data type itself doesn't care about accidentally having things of different kinds in there. JavaScript is very flexible about types. Someone's got an idea. Someone's saying, oh, this might, all the things dot push 50. Would it return 500? No, it would return 500 if we had as the very next line here. And it's good that we're going through this now. Uh-oh, lost my drawing machine. If I had as the very next line here, all the things two, that would give me 500. All the things dot push 50 should put a 50 onto the end of the array. But because we've got all this code here that we can't see, we actually have no idea what the elements of all the things are. So you have to be careful with the flow of your arrays and changing things, because you could have a draw function which is changing your array, all the things, does some stuff, right? It adds things, takes them away, who knows. And then at some point you want to add 50 to your array or put it on the end. And you really can't be sure quite what else is there unless you're really sure of how your flow is working in your program. How do we know what's in your array? Now this is a trick I will use more and more as we get through this course. But if you want to find out what's in your array, you can print it. Print odd numbers. Oh, whoops, odd numbers 3. Okay, there's my array. -7, 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 5, 7, 53. If I do that in the draw function, it'll print it over and over again, which is amusing to see, I guess. Wow, there it goes. On and on and on it goes. Because we're running the draw function continually. Okay, hopefully get to the end of this arrays bit. I want to do something else. Anything else? Oh, arrays and arrays. You can have an array in your array. I know you like arrays, so we like to put arrays inside your array, so you can array while you array. We call these nested arrays, and the typical way for addressing a nested array, no problem doing this. It's completely fine. Then if you use the first index, you'll get back an array, and if you use 2 indexes, you'll get back a number. So this one's going to get you array 1, 3, and then the number 3. So that will get us back a 3. Yeah, oh cool. Some neat JavaScript going on in the chat. Looping over an array, really good one. What if we loop over the array and print them out? Print, oh, numbers. So this is where it's handy in a for loop to have this index variable, because you can use that variable to get into the array, get each element out. There's another way to do this without having the counter variable. I'll show you that in the demo today, I think, but for now, here's a good way of getting all those numbers in the array. We'll definitely do this in the demo. I've got a long demo plan, so I've got to get through this lecture. All right. Question for you folks. How do we know if art is good? Wrong answers only, please. You got 5 minutes. I want to see some wrong answers in the chat. Hot take, all art is bad. That's nasty. All art is bad. Controversial, I suppose, but possible. It's good if you get paid for it. Good if you get paid for it. That's an extremely hot take. If Picasso made it, I suppose that's right. So the fame of the artist. Let's have a few of these on the board. So the cost of the art is good for telling how good it is. I guess the artist, or the prestige of the artist fame, as a way of telling if art is good or not. Anything else? Or the mental breakdown. So only artists who have serious mental illness. We shouldn't joke about that too much, because a lot of artists really do suffer from terrible mental illness problems. Someone claims their artwork is good. So what the artist says about it. Artist claim. Art is good if and only if Melody says it's good. The Melody criterion. Anything else? Ooh, likes and engagement, a classic one. Love that. Artist is dead. Likes and engagement. I mean, this one's a squiggly one. Josh came up with that one. Likes and engagement. I mean, some people do kind of define art in terms of what the community defines is good. That's one aspect of the quality of art, can be whether it's accepted as good by the community. So that kind of is related to likes and engagement, isn't it? Money laundering. Oh, things you never imagined. Unimaginable art. So you folks are doing really well. When it's famous, we got artist fame already. There's a lot of these things which we use to judge art, and folks are in the chat are joking about these as wrong answers, but aren't they kind of one of the ways that society as a whole often does judge art? We look at heuristics like the prestige of the artist, or where it's hanging, or how expensive it is, or how big it is, or how famous it is on Facebook or something. Or just some certain people who are the official arbiters, like the judges of a competition or the curators of a gallery. These are the people who are themselves defining whether art is good or not. The NFT one, yeah, sadness. Judging art can be tricky. And what I want to say is that it's tricky but not impossible. And maybe it's tricky if you're unfamiliar with it, and it might feel difficult if you're used to rating things in terms of quite quantifiable measures, like length, height, number of likes, very quantifiable things, number of dollars it cost. And as a society, often we like to put things into quantifiable terms. But art critique, art judgment, art understanding doesn't always exist in that. And when people do put a quantifiable thing on it and use that as a heuristic, that can sometimes overshadow the actual engagement with the art that's required to know whether it's good or not, or try to understand whether it's good. So I've got a few points to make about how to judge art. And these slides came from my colleague, Tony Curran, who developed them a few years ago. And he really knows as an art lecturer. I guess I know about interactive art in computing with P5, but Tony is a more general artist. Here's a few ways of thinking about it. Is there any better way than just guessing, or money, or those quantifiable things? Maybe you like something, but how do you know I will like it? What are the things that are more universal than just the feelings that you have, or the feeling melody has as the main criterion of whether something's good? So here's an example. This piece, again, I've shown this slide before. It's called Blue Poles by Jackson Pollock. It's a very famous artwork that hangs here in Canberra in the National Gallery of Australia. It was very expensive when they purchased it in the 70s. And I think it was the most expensive artwork they'd bought within the gallery, or one of the most expensive. And people looked at it and were like, well, what is that? That's not art, that's just splashes. How can that be worth that much money? And they couldn't understand the value in terms of the dollars put on it with the artistic output. And they didn't have the tools initially to understand the artistic quality. But if you go stand in front of it and have a think and look and sit there, you know that this is good art, that it's impressive, that it communicates something important. Not sure what it is, but it feels important. So, 3 ways to judge a work of art, coming from Tony Curran. 3 aspects that we could use. Ethical, is it good for the world? Poetic, is it made well? And aesthetic, is it beautiful? And they're kind of orthogonal aspects, right? Something can be beautiful but not made well. It can be not beautiful, sometimes that's thought to be not beautiful, but made well. Or it can be beautiful and made poorly. Things can be framed in terms of ethics as well. What does it do to the world? What is it saying? Is it something we want or something we need? So there's lots of ways of understanding art, but these are 3 really main aspects that you can think about when judging art in general, not just interactive art in P5. Ethics. So going back to our definitions of what art was, if we look at the Platonic definition of or the ancient Greek definition of a representation of something in the world, and Plato would argue that artworks are lies deceiving us from the truth. So it's possible that having a lie in an artwork can create a kind of ethical position in it. Here's an image that's just designed to deceive. Has anyone seen what this is? It's an artwork that came out some years ago by Bill Posters and colleagues called Imagine This, and it was part of an exhibition of artworks created using deep learning models to generate images. And it was in this style called a deep fake. So you'd make a fake video of someone saying something or appearing to say something, but it was created by the artworks, and it's very convincing because of the way that these machine learning systems have learned from existing videos and existing images of people. So a very convincing, photorealistic, fake video, and in this case it was Mark Zuckerberg making comments about Facebook, sort of admitting that Facebook was evil in some way and increasing transparency, which was actually faked by the artists to make a social comment, not only on Facebook, but on machine learning. So the deception in the artwork was part of the point of the artwork, and also part of its ethical stance in the world. It's unethical to make something which is deceptive, but also is it ethical to make a social comment that could potentially have a good outcome? Should deepfakes be considered art? Well, this was part of an artwork on the wall in an exhibition, so I think it's generally considered to be art, this particular example. Not all deepfakes would have that status because I think that they're not meeting the je ne sais quoi quality, but this one, it was posed in such a way that it did. Another artwork with some deception. And this is an artwork not in a gallery, but it's on the wall of a pub in Melbourne, Union Hotel. It's unnamed. I think there's an artist on there, but this photo is by Liz Connor. And you can read a bit more about the style that it's in. It's in a style, I guess you could call it Aboriginal kitsch, which was an art style from Australia in the mid-20th century, including figures of Aboriginal people that were really fake versions about what Aboriginal people do and what life is like for them and who they are as a people. And they were fake because they were white Western artists in Australia reinterpreting Aboriginal people to make them a sort of lesser than or a childlike people that needed to be looked after, and sort of supporting the way that colonialism had treated Aboriginal people, which was badly, by the way. And so by reframing Aboriginal people into a group that needed to be looked after by the West or by Western culture, everyone could feel all right about colonialism. So it's a deeply unethical way to frame a group of people, isn't it? And this is an example. This girl doesn't exist. The girl is shown as sort of a native who's unashamed by having no top on. In Western society, that would be shameful, but because they're a native, a First Nations person, they don't have to be ashamed because they're not part of Western society. But also, she's kind of looking at the viewer, who's probably a man, a male gaze holder, in a pub, in a way that, like, kind of taking a joke on top of sexual promiscuity. So it's a deeply unethical framing of Aboriginal culture, and really interesting how art can be unethical in this way. You can read more. There's a link to an article about Aboriginal kitsch and lots of examples of ways that Aboriginal art has sort of purposely framed Aboriginal people in a lesser way to make people feel all right about it. Just put them into the background of Australian culture. So, poetics. Aristotle says, well, a lie is a lie, okay, but if a lie is made well, maybe we'll like it. So it could help us in some way. When I think about poetics in the current contemporary culture, I'm not just going to talk about art galleries here, but let's talk about the art that most people really like to consume. Popular media, TV, and movies. That's a hot take, Aristotle, yes. TV and movies are the most consumed kind of art, and games, really. And Instagram, I suppose, but TV and movies are very, very famous and big budget, huge amounts of money put into them. Are they art? Well, they certainly have a high poetic value. And this is an example from Avengers Endgame, which is possibly like, I don't know, I watched it, but it's like, it just made me feel so bad. Like, there's just nothing there. It was all visual effects and all a really a well-constructed but terrible story. I mean, it's probably an Endgames fan out there, and I really don't want to take away what you enjoy about them. And certainly the visual effects are stunning, and this example shows, right, the way that a scene is constructed with all of these warriors of Asgard or whoever they are, and a big horse, and this guy, and whatever's going on over there. And this woman has some powerful woman doing some magic or something. And then the real version of what's happening is like, she's standing there with a kind of power pose, and the horse is like, I don't know what this is, some kind of, looks like a ride that I put my daughter on to have fun. And then there's a couple of dudes dressed in very unflattering green suits at the back, rocking it back and forward. So in some sense, I look at this and it's both amazing how much effort is put in to make something great. And of course, I'm involved in performing arts as well. I'm also involved in stagecraft and the lies and poetics that goes into that. But it just feels like it's not quite satisfying when I see this image. So I feel like these movies, Avengers movies, all of the big blockbuster comic book franchises, very often they're leaning into poetics as the main thing. This movie is going to look awesome. It's going to be very well constructed, but it's not doing anything good for the world, and it's perhaps not that beautiful either. The last function, aesthetics, Kant said beauty is the measure. So you can kind of have a gut instinct about an artwork's beauty or ugliness, sublimity and humor, balance, harmony, and dissonance. There's ways of getting into aesthetics and finding other different aspects of it. But there's also a kind of high-level emotional response just to something being truly beautiful in a way that we all agree. It just seems to work. And just an example artwork that everyone agrees has a kind of just amazing presence, Wanderer Above the Sea of Fog by Caspar David Friedrich. And just a kind of amazing aesthetic aspect that everything just works together. And I see the same thing, I guess, when I'm marking P5 assignments from COMP1720 students. There's a way you can just see it and see, oh, everything just fits together in a great way. It's not by accident, it's by the choices that you folks make when you create your artworks to let it all fit together. The composition, the colors, the shapes you're choosing, the subject matter, it all fits together in a way that brings the aestheticness above it. So most critiques of art will address some or a mix of these concerns. Is it good for the world? Ethical. Is it made well? Poetics. Is it beautiful? Aesthetics. And here in 6720, these criteria apply as well. And I'd like you to think maybe, how does the quality of the code and the quality of interactions that you make in your work map into these values? Someone's pointing out the sets of the Mandalorian, ... I don't know anything about the sets of the Mandalorian, so maybe you could expand your ... so I know. And then we can do a demo. It's it's question time, but also demo time. I've got a demo today where we're going to do some array work. Anyone got any questions in the first instance? Not seeing any, but we'll just make some arrays. So I think I'll make this window width and window height. I guess I want a nice black background for my setup. And what I'm going to do is not make polka dots, but make some little bugs. I like making a kind of firefly artworks. And I thought I could do something with a fireflies that move. I guess what's my inspiration? I've been playing a Zelda game recently called The Wind Waker. And it's got this nice firefly effect. Where are they? No, there they are, there's one. There'll be lots of them in a scene all around. They're really pretty. And I'd like something like that. That's my inspiration for today. It is an excellent choice of game. I do love Wind Waker. So back to the Mandalorian stagecraft. Someone's just sent me a link. And they've got cool panoramic. Wow, yeah, so real prac visual effects. That's amazing. Big panoramic scenes painted onto big boards to cast the background. So my firefly is going to be a little guy, a little bug. I'm sorry. I have to have chain lozenges at this stage. And I want an ellipse. And I'd like an, I should go coolers. Let's get some colors. I've seen some great palettes going up. Oh, this is great, just what I wanted. Something like that for the dragonfly. 243-227-124. Okay, so I've got a firefly function. Let's make a few. Four. So I'm not speaking while I'm doing this. I should be providing a guiding commentary. I'm kind of getting to where we were with the polka dots, which is that I had 10 polka dots on the screen. So here's my 10 fireflies. Whoops, they disappeared. Put the background there. Well, they're nice. And what I want to do is have fireflies that move a little bit, because in Wind Waker they were kind of moving around, and particularly as you walk by them, they shuffle away. But if I put them into draw and start making them move, because I've got random locations for each one, they're going to go all over the screen, and that's not good. That's not what I want. So what have I got to do? Where's the light effect? I don't know. You folks can figure out the little ambient light effect, or maybe we can do another ellipse. So you're nerd sniping me with that one massively. RGB, like 10, 10, 200, ellipse, X, Y, size times 10. 0.2 or something. Oh, it's in front of them. I want it behind them. Probably only see that when they're stopped. Anyway, we'll get to that in a minute. That's going to be like a halo for them. And that's the little bug. Okay. So what I really would like to do is to have a number of fireflies and store their X and Y locations. And to do that, it would be good to have an array of X and Y locations, wouldn't it? So I'm going to start to make some variables. I'll make some global variables, define them globally, because that would be sensible for operating them later. Firefly X, let firefly Y. Cool. So now, in our setup, let's populate these arrays. So we'll say for let I equal 0, I less than number of fireflies, I plus plus, a loop. So we're going to loop over our number of fireflies, and we're going to add, with the push function, some random numbers. Firefly y.push random height. Okay, so this is setting up my firefly list. Arrays, actually, firefly location arrays. All right, now in my draw function, I'll do the same for loop, looping over the number of fireflies. But instead of putting a random location, I'll use the location I find in the array. Firefly Y. Cool. Let's see it. Is it going to work? No. Oh, why doesn't it work? I need to make them empty arrays first. Whoops, and I need to have that as a number. That could be an empty array, otherwise push doesn't work. And I should give this a number. I'll just go to 10 again. There's my fireflies. I really want a blue kind of blue background. The numbers for fill always confuse me. Fill RGB. I want RGBA. And what is the... Right? Alpha. Is the alpha range 0 to 255? Ah, I think it is. I always get confused by that. Okay, they got a little, oh, that's nice. A little halo for each one. A little darker. No stroke, please. I might just layer it up so I get two. I'll get a small, the halo, I just want it to be a little bit more something, a little bit of je ne sais quoi on that one. So we're going to get two, one that's a bit bigger or a bit smaller in the middle. Oh yeah, that's where, almost there. Size 3. If I do 3, that'll be really nice. I'm just layering up a few translucent. Now that's a firefly. That's pretty cool. All right, so far so good, but they're not moving. I need them to move. So what I could do is update my Firefly values. So every time I draw them, I'm going to add a small number or take away a small number. Plus random minus 2, 2. Does that work? I think so. There we go. Oh, that's good. I've done this before, but I've never had the halos. Now, the cool thing about these arrays is that now I've got a function doing the fireflies. If I want to change all the fireflies together, I only have to change something in the function. And if I want to change something about the number of fireflies, I can just change one thing. If I want 20 fireflies, I can do that. If I want 100 fireflies, well, you know what? We can have them. There's 100 fireflies. Now that's pretty cool. There's the catchphrase for the day. That is pretty cool. I like it. Now, one thing I might like to change about these fireflies is their brightness, because they're all the same brightness, but they might be, coming back and forth, turning on and off. So I'm going to change their brightness. That means we need to add a parameter. I'm going to add another array. Firefly B dot push random I don't know, 255. It's a bit hard to know. I'll think of a better way to do brightness in a minute. I got a lozenge stuck underneath my lip. That's a bit confusing. Let's get that out. Off camera. So I got my brightness, okay. Oh, now I need to use my brightness, firefly BI. Okay, and the brightness is going to go there. B. We'll think about how to integrate it into the halo in a minute. So these work so far. Now they're all different brightnesses. Some of them are very dim and some of them are bright. And then I want to jitter around my brightness as well. I should probably use sine or something for this. Someone in the chat, tell me a good way to use sine in this instance. I'll put them on a kind of cycle. So we're going to have random 100. I know this is going to be weird, but +1. I want them on some cyclic sequence. I'm just playing around here. I'm not quite sure what's going to happen. So it's going to be a number between 0 and 100, and they'll get brighter and then blink out eventually. And then when I'm actually using the brightness, let brightness equal, like, I don't know, sine B. I don't know, something like this. Oh, so many good ideas here. All right. I'll do my bad idea and then I'll put someone's good idea in here. Well, that's not right. That's not right at all. So Harry Gibbs had a good idea. It should be brightness equals, I'll use the whole brightness, 255 times square root sine frame count divided by 100 squared. Are you just doing that to give me an absolute value? Surely there's a better way of getting absolute value. Keep it positive, yeah. Well, okay. We can spare the cycle. So they're all going to work together on the same sequence now. Well, that's cool. But I want it to be frame count plus b or something, plus some offset. I'll just try with B. Oh, well, that's not too bad. They tend to blink out, which is not what I want. I'll just get rid of there. They just get bigger and bigger. Now they're in different places. Well, the map function could work, yeah. I could map things. I don't really feel like mapping right now. That's a bit too much for lecture 4 in 1720. I got to change the halo somehow. I want it to change a little bit. I'll just get the average between the brightness value or halo brightness take the average of that with 75. What? Oh, I'm missing a right bracket. Now my halos disappear a bit as well. That's cool. They get a bit too bright though when the brightness gets bigger. I'm gonna make it lower. The min of that and 125. I don't want to go at 125. There we go. Now that is pretty cool. Ooh. I'm going to copy something in from the team. I'm on the wrong team here, I think. Where's my general chat? I like this version of... what's this one? Is this Melody's submission? Is this for the Halo? Yeah, cool. All right, well, we'll try it. Light, X, Y, size was going to be size. 10, 10, 255. Oh, yeah, and it's slowing down. My poor little GPU, or this browser is not happy with that. Doing a bit too much work. We'll reduce the number of fireflies, and that might work. Just have 3 fireflies and see how it goes. Yeah, fine like that. It's a beautiful halo. But I think my cheap and cheerful one is what I'll keep. Just 3 layers is not too bad. I think if we made too many fireflies here, 10,000 fireflies, it will slow down as well. The more things you try to do, the slower it gets, because it has to do all these loops and draw every single little circle separately. So we're not doing very many efficiency hacks in this game. This has to count as art. Look, I'm not sure. Like, it's certainly a nice demo, but right now with this, we're not saying anything with it. So we're not trying to communicate. I'm just making a pretty picture. So good for poetic. Aesthetic, it could be good, but it's not quite like the ethical part where it's doing something or meaning something isn't quite there. But maybe we could develop this further and find some meaning. But I do really like these fireflies. Folks, it's 11:55. I said I'd show you one more thing. I'm going to show you another way of looping through an array. This is a way where you don't have to use a... of the arrays already exist. You don't have to use a counter. So I could be going let for const x of firefly x, and that will give me all of the x's in a list, which is not very useful. It's slowing down my code like crazy. In this case, it's not very useful. It'll be very useful next week, because next week we're going to do objects. So next week, rather than make our fireflies in 3 separate arrays, we can have one array of firefly objects that will include all of the data about each of those fireflies. So we don't have to keep checking different arrays, and that will save us some time and just be a much nicer way to code. So I hope you enjoyed this. I really enjoyed making this firefly demo. I've done a previous one of this, but this one I find is just much more beautiful. I think the Wind Waker inspo has really awakened. I need a different background. It's like dark green or something. Where's that? Give me another one. Dark green background. How do I... Just give me a different color. Ugh. No. None of that. What? Oh, red down. Yeah, that game, it's a very dark green, bluey sort of game. I want to see, 07732. 07732. Not quite there. Take it down a bit. Too bright. Too bright. Too dark. I should be using HSL so I could just change the lightness. There we go. Love it. Yeah, someone's right. The lack of meaning isn't unethical, though. It's not unethical. It's just that it doesn't consider that aspect of the world. Like, where in those 3 was the meaning of a work of art? I think that's how it relates to the world, and ethics is about that relation in some sense. There's the absence of ethics as well as the anti-ethics. Okay, I'm wrapping it up. Folks, thank you for joining me today. Sorry about the coughs. Hopefully I increase in being better next week. Please, please, please finish up that assignment today. Get it in. If there's any issues, look on our policy for extensions. There's the extension app. You can make an extension request. We'll look at those today. The drop-in lab this afternoon at 5 p.m. is available for you to jump in and get your GitLab and final submission questions answered. I'll post this. This is the Wind Waker lights. Wind Waker fireflies. I'll post this in the chat, and I gotta make a nice, no, edit. Uh-oh. I've got to make a nice collection of all of these from this year as well. And with that, I will catch you on Monday. Keep an eye on the forum for news about assignment 2, which I'll hopefully have out tomorrow, unless there's some issue with it. So, see you next week, folks.